So when you think about what makes a country a global superpower, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Probably huge armies, right? Or, a massive economy. And for centuries, you'd have been absolutely right. But what if I told you that entire rulebook is being tossed out the window, replaced by an invisible force that's changing everything? Well, let's dive into a really fascinating new theory that might just explain where real global power comes from in the 21st century.
All right, so to really get a handle on where we're headed, we've got to first look back at where we've been. It's super important. For, generations, the way we sized up a nation's strength was, well, it was pretty straightforward. And it was all about physical stuff you could actually count.
The whole equation was just simple. A country's power, it was basically its military might plus its economic muscle. That's it. The more tanks you had, the more factories, the more ships, the more power you had on the world stage. That was the fundamental math of geopolitics for a long, long time.
And there's actually a name for this way of looking at the world. It's called traditional realism. The core idea is that, nations are always competing with each other to stay safe. And the best way to do that, just build up so much military and economic strength that nobody would dare mess with you. This isn't some new idea. This model has literally defined empires and guided world leaders for centuries.
But, and this is the big but, we have to ask ourselves a really critical question right now. In a world that's being run more and more by algorithms and AI, does that old model, the one based on hardware and physical strength, does it still even work, or is it becoming, dangerously out of date?
Okay, so this is where a pretty radical new theory comes into play. It's called algorithmic realism, and it was put forward by a thinker named Albert. And what he suggests is that the old equation of power, it's being totally replaced by something different. Something based not on steel, but on silicon. What algorithmic realism argues is that real, true state power today, it's not about how much land you have or how many bonds you own. Nope, it's about something the theory calls computational sovereignty. So what's that? It's a nation's power to own, build, and control its own advanced AI systems. It's basically controlling the digital foundation that our entire modern society is built on.
And this next point just illustrates the shift perfectly. Tan says that the most powerful nation in the world, what we'd call the hegemon, isn't the one with the most tanks anymore. No way. It's the state that has the most efficient truth-rendering engine.
A truth-rendering engine. What even is that? Well, think of it this way. It's an AI system's power to define reality itself. It's the ability to interpret things that happen, to frame information in a certain way, and at the end of the day, to literally shape the reality that millions or even billions of its users see and experience every single day. So you can see how this leads to a huge, profound shift in how we need to think about global power and influence. The old geopolitical chessboard we all learned about. It's being completely redrawn from the ground up.
And this brings us right to the absolute core idea of this whole theory. We are making a fundamental move away from that classic balance of power, the one measured in armies and economies, and we're entering a brand new era. An era defined by the balance of compute.
But here's the thing. This new kind of power, it's not spread out evenly at all. Not even close. If compute is the new currency of power, then you better believe there's a really clear and really rigid hierarchy being formed. So what this theory of algorithmic realism suggests is that the world is now splitting into two very different layers. It's a new kind of global pecking order, and it's based entirely on one thing: who owns the machines that create intelligence?
These two levels are called the base layer and the application layer. It's pretty simple. You're either one of the owners of the core technology, or you're just a user. And in this new reality, believe me, that distinction makes all the difference in the world.
Okay, let's break down who's in each of these layers. At the bottom, you've got the base layer. These are the owners. Think about the countries and the companies that are designing the super advanced chips. We're talking about the US and firms like NVIDIA, or the ones building the gigantic data centers and the foundational AI models themselves, like Google with Gemini or OpenAI with GPT. They own the absolute core infrastructure for intelligence. So, what about everyone else? Well, they operate on the application layer. They're the users. They're the countries, the businesses, the regular people building apps and tools on top of that foundation. But, and this is key, they don't control the foundation itself.
And this, right here, is the most crucial point. If you own the base layer, you control the entire game. A country that controls the core AI models and the chips that run them, they have the power to shape, to filter, and even to dictate reality for all the countries that are just users. That's exactly what we meant by computational sovereignty earlier, that immense power that comes from owning the foundation. Now, I know this might all sound a little abstract, a little theoretical, but the real-world consequences of this new power structure, they're already starting to happen. And honestly, the stakes could not be higher.
So, let's talk stakes. What are we really talking about here? Well, first off, it's control over the flow of information itself. The owners of the base layer can influence subtly, or, not so subtly, the news and data that billions of people consume. Second, it's the power to literally define what's true. Just imagine an AI model that's trained to always frame one country's actions as, say, destabilizing, while others are always protective. That is shaping reality on a massive global scale. Then you've got economic dominance. If your country's entire industry relies on AI tools built and controlled by another nation, well, your economic future is pretty much in their hands, isn't it? And finally, this whole thing challenges the very idea of what it means to be a sovereign nation. I mean, can a country really be independent if its digital backbone, its information diet, and its economic engine are all running on technology controlled by someone else? And I really want to be clear about this. This isn't some sci-fi movie plot about the future. The argument of algorithmic realism is that this balance of compute, it's the invisible power structure that is already shaping our world, right now, as we speak.
All of this leaves us with one final, and I think really vital question we all need to think about. As we rely more and more on these incredibly powerful AI systems for pretty much everything, our news, our knowledge, our connection to the world, it's probably worth asking yourself, who owns the base layer? Who is building your reality?